Yeah, we back. Yeah, we back. Now, today we're going to be talking about Ivory Coast, right? Now, it's some news in the headline that Ivory Coast is now the latest African nation to demand the so-called departure of French military personnel from the national territory. Now, on the surface, a lot of people seen this news and was like, oh man, another loss for France. But I'll be honest, that's not my reaction when it comes to this specific situation and this specific scenario. You see, we got to use discernment. We got to use critical thinking. We got to be three-dimensional thinkers when we are examining the world around us, right? We cannot let our enemies get the upper hand on us intellectually, right? Now, before we get started, let's jump straight into the article. Take a look up on the screen. Ivory Coast asks French troops to leave, the latest African country to do so. Ivory Coast announced on Tuesday that French troops will leave the country after a decades-long military presence, the latest African nation to downscale military ties with the former colonial power. The Ivorian president Alassane Ouattara said the pullout would begin in January 2025. Now, listen, obviously, on my channel, we celebrate every time France takes a geopolitical loss. But in this video, we're not going to be celebrating, right? We have to use discernment, like I said, and we have to understand who are we talking about here? We're talking about the president of Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara. And when you talk about trusted Western allies on the African continent, Alassane Ouattara, he's going to be at the top of the list. He's going to be high up on the list, right? If he's not going to be number one, he's going to be at least number 2 or 3. And Ivory Coast is a very critical chess piece for France when it comes to their foreign policy in Africa. And I say all that to say, this announcement cannot be compared to what happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. This is not the same thing. This is not the same thing at all. Alassane Ouattara would never go against France because he owes his entire presidency to France, right? Alassane Ouattara came to power because the French military brought him to power through the force of arms. And also, we can't forget, he's married to a white French Jewish woman. That means that his in-laws are French, which means that he has white Frenchmen that are part of his family. So I say all that to say, there is not a single universe that exists where Alassane Ouattara is ever going to be waging any type of warfare against the French, whether it's economic warfare, diplomatic warfare, geopolitical warfare. It'll never happen. You can't kick the white man out the country when the white man is literally sitting at your dinner table, right? That's why I don't understand folks that talk about, oh yeah, you could be pro-black and date outside the race. No, you can't. No, you can't. You're going to be compromised. You're not going to be able to stand on business. And I guarantee if you dig into his finances, I guarantee he probably got some properties in France, probably got some bank accounts overseas, some investments in France. I know his wife definitely does. His wife's family definitely does. So no, Alassane Ouattara is never going to be able to stand on revolutionary black business the way he's supposed to because he's compromised in every single way imaginable. He's so compromised it don't even make no sense. But anyways, I'm going to run the footage of Alassane Ouattara making this fraudulent announcement talking about we kicking the white man out the country. Please run the footage. I'll be right back.
We can be proud of our army, whose modernization is now effective. It is in this context that we have decided on the coordinated and organized withdrawal of the French forces in Côte d'Ivoire. Thus, the camp of the 43rd Marine Infantry Battalion in Port Bouet will be handed back to the armed forces of Côte d'Ivoire as of January 2025.
We back. Now, this man takes us for a joke. Alassane Ouattara takes us for a joke. And like I said, the reason why this announcement to me has no credibility is because of who it's coming from. The fact of the matter is he is simply in too deep with France. He's in too deep, right? And he's like 82 years old, man. I mean, the guy's 82 years old. I mean, he's been a loyal, vassal of the Western forces for decades and decades. He's not going to switch up now. He's not going to switch up now at the age of goddamn 82. You think at 82 years old, he going to wake up and decide that it's time to stand on revolutionary black business? Stop it. The man got a white wife, a white father-in-law. He probably got, bank accounts in France and properties in France. Stop it, man. Alassane Ouattara, he's not that guy. He's simply not that guy. Like I said, the only reason he's the president of Ivory Coast is because the French deployed their military to make it happen, right? They launched airstrikes on the candidate that was running against him, captured the opponent, and handed him the keys to the presidential palace. That's exactly how it went down, right? Let's talk about it. Take a look up on the screen. France has given the green light for its troops to participate in a UN operation in Ivory Coast aimed at neutralizing the incumbent president, Gbagbo. That was the candidate that was running up against Alassane Ouattara back like 2011. French President Nicolas Sarkozy on Monday authorized French troops to take part in a UN military operation in Ivory Coast aimed at taking out the heavy weapons of incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo. The president of France responded positively to this request and authorized French forces to participate in the operations aimed at protecting civilians. Protecting civilians. Anyways, let's continue. Forces supporting Ivory Coast internationally recognized President Alassane Ouattara claimed late on Monday that they had taken control of the presidential residence. Oh my God. Now, like I mentioned in previous videos, this is the true purpose of all their scattered military bases all across the continent. You see, back in those days, they were able to mobilize their troops and just capture the goddamn presidential palace in a single day, right? That's why they had the military bases all over the goddamn west coast of Africa. Now let's continue. The French army took control of the country's main airport on Sunday to allow the evacuation of foreigners from the country. The latest deployment brings the number of French troops in the country as part of the UN mission to 1,650. So that was back in 2011 when President Alassane Ouattara rose to power with the assistance of the French armed forces. The same French military he's so-called kicking out in the modern day. No, you're not. Stop it. No, you're not. Anyway, let's continue. Let's read some more articles from that time period. UN and French helicopters fire on Gbagbo's residence. Smoke could be seen rising from Ivory Coast incumbent leader Laurent Gbagbo's residence in Abidjan on Sunday, after French and UN helicopters fired on the building during an operation to eliminate heavy weapons used by pro-Gbagbo forces. French and UN helicopters attacked heavy weapons of troops loyal to Ivory Coast incumbent president Laurent Gbagbo on Sunday, and Gbagbo's spokesman said his residence had been partly destroyed. So the French done destroyed my man's whole crib. The French destroyed my man's crib, bro, just to install this man into power. That's crazy, man. Let's continue. Residents near the presidential palace and Gbagbo's residence, where he is said to be holed up with his family, close advisors, and about 1,000 militiamen, said they heard heavy cannon fire and shooting late on Sunday afternoon. In Paris, lawyers for Ouattara, in a letter to the French government and the international community on Sunday, asked United Nations and French forces to eliminate Gbagbo's heavy weapons and militia and bring him to justice. Right? So Alassane Ouattara had his lawyers personally request that the French, destroy his political opponent, Laurent Gbagbo. Right? So, like I said, this guy will never stand in opposition to the French. So don't think that, at 83 years old, he's going to transform into some type of revolutionary black man with a white French woman in the passenger seat. Please, stop it. Stop it, bro. Stop it. I ain't trying to hear none of that shit. Anyway, let's continue. Pro-Ouattara commanders say they have now launched their final assault on the city and expect to take it in a matter of days. Now, like I said, this man came to power through the force of arms, right? And who did he have behind him? The French military. So don't ever think that he's ever going to stand in opposition to French economic interests, French military interests, French geopolitical interests. No, he is their guy, right? He is a trusted Western ally, trusted Western ally, man. But anyways, I'm about to play a clip from some government officials within the AES, right? The Alliance of Sahelian States, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. I'm going to play a clip. The first clip is going to be from the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mali, the good brother Abdoulaye Diop, right? Shout out to the good brother. I rock with you, big bro. I got love for you, right? Then I think the second clip is going to be from, the spokesman. The second and third clip is going to be the spokesman of Burkina Faso, and the last one's going to be the spokesman from the military government in Niger. So that's what I'm about to play. The first clip, the foreign minister of Mali, Abdoulaye Diop, and the second and third clip is going to be the minister of communication from Burkina Faso, and then the last clip is going to be the spokesman for the military government in Niger speaking on this situation. So run the clip. I'll be right back. Let's go.
Also, the College of Heads of State is closely following the deceptive maneuvers, claiming to close her military bases in certain African countries to replace them with a less visible setup. Claiming to close her military bases in certain African countries to replace them with a less visible setup, but continuing the same neocolonial ambition in its activities. Also, the College of Heads of State is closely monitoring the deceptive maneuvers, claiming to close her military bases in certain African countries to replace them with a less visible arrangement, but still pursuing the same neo-colonial intent. To these activities are added operations of reorganization and regrouping of terrorist groups in the Lake Chad Basin.
Now, once again, shout out to the good brothers in the AES. Shout out to the good brothers in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. I love the fact that they all move as one voice when it comes to their foreign policy. Just like how NATO, right, the Western powers, they all move as one block when it comes to their foreign policy, right? That's how we got to move as black men, right? We have to move as one voice, one body when it comes to international affairs, right? We can't be all divided and discombobulated. No, this is what we call Pan-Africanism, right? This is what it is, right? So anyways, they basically calling it like it is, right? They know it's some bullshit. We know it's some bullshit. We know Alison Ouattara. We know, come on, man. We know what it is with you, bro. We know what time it is with you, man. But one thing that stuck out to me was how they said that the French are not leaving the region. They're simply transitioning to a different military strategy. And this is not a secret because President Macron, he even announced something similar last summer, over the summer, right? Take a look up on the screen. There were articles published that said this: France is cutting down troops in West and Central Africa. France is planning to reduce its military presence in West and Central Africa to around 600 troops, in line with President Macron's plans to limit the French military footprint in the region, right? Just like they said, moving to a less visible arrangement, right? Let's continue. France reducing military presence in West and Central Africa. France is planning to drastically reduce its pre-positioned military forces in Africa amid growing anti-French sentiment. Let's get into it. In February, Macron tasked the former minister, Jean-Marie Bockel, with working out the new modalities of the French military presence with African partners. His conclusions are expected in July. In May, Bockel told the Senate that France wanted to reduce its visible presence, but maintain logistical human material access to these countries while reinforcing our action in response to their aspirations. The French army plans to set up a Paris-based command dedicated to Africa this summer, two sources close to the matter told AFP. The French army is not ruling out pooling its bases with Americans or European partners, the chief of staff of the French Armed Forces, General Thierry Boucard, has said. According to Boucard, the tighter new structure will make it possible to maintain relations with local military authorities, gather intelligence, and pursue operational partnerships, among other tasks. Now, as we can see, right, France is trying to get ahead of the anti-French sentiment, right? Like I said, instead of being chased out and embarrassed, right? So they're going to take the initiative and we're going to reduce our visible footprint, right? We got all these bases scattered all across Africa. It's not a good look. Everybody talking shit about us. So let's downsize, let's regroup, let's make a tactical retreat, and let's come back, stronger and better, right? That's what they plan on doing. That's what they're trying to do, right? Now, I want to get into this article that was written by this beautiful black woman, Farida Nabarima. I think I pronounced the name right. If I didn't, I apologize, sis. But, her take on the situation was just, I couldn't even say it better myself. Shout out to her, man. Shout out to her. So let's get into it, right? She said this: Alison Ouattara is France's most loyal servant and devoted supporter in the region. This man will kill for France and he will die for France. He did not ask the French to leave. He owes his presidency to France, and he would have never seized power and maintained it without France's military intervention in Côte d'Ivoire that led to the forceful removal of his predecessor, Laurent Gbagbo, by French troops back in 2011. Ouattara has been the most outspoken parrot of France, defending its colonial practices and currency, and even threatening his neighbors with war, all for the sake of France. He lives, breathes, and will die for France. Let's not make this most loyal slave a hero, and be careful of crafting a narrative through sensational titles. It is misleading and dangerous. Now, shout out to this sister, man. Listen, like I said, man, I love the black woman, dog. I love the black woman. I don't care what nobody say. I love the black woman. Let's continue. She went on to say, this is rather France's decision to withdraw troops from its former colonies as announced by Macron. Like I said before, it is a strategic shift in its foreign policy, a calculated attempt to save face following the humiliating expulsions of its forces from the Sahel. This withdrawal is far from a retreat. The French government had announced these plans months ago, collaborating closely with leaders like Ouattara to execute a more covert form of control. By pivoting to non-military methods of dominance, France aims to maintain its leverage and influence while avoiding the visible backlash that military presence provokes. Exactly. Like we mentioned in the article from before, they even said it, they goddamn self, right? We want to reduce our visible presence, but maintain logistical, human, and material access to these countries, right? That's what the minister, Jean-Marie Bockel, said. Matter of fact, let me put this picture on the screen so you know who said that. We got to put a face to the name, right? We got to make sure, we got to know who the enemy is, right? So it was this guy right here, right? This goofy, right? He the one who said that, right? We want to maintain access to these countries, but reduce our visibility. That's what the enemy said. The enemy said it himself, right? So shout out to the sister. You know what I mean? Shout out to her. She already know what time it is. Let's continue. She went on to say, this is not an exit like we have witnessed in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, but rather a repositioning, abandoning a sinking ship before it fully capsizes, all while ensuring the strings of influence remain firmly in their hands. Now, like I said, shout out to the sister, obviously a critical thinking black woman, a three-dimensional thinker. She already know what time it is, man. That's why I say, man, I love the black woman, bro. You think Alassane Ouattara could have these caliber of conversations with his white French wife? Hell no. Hell no. Now, let's continue. She went on to say, this so-called withdrawal is eerily reminiscent of the colonial strategies of the 1950s and 1960s, when Togo voted for independence on April 27, 1958, with 97% of the population rejecting French control. The colonists panicked. Guinea followed 5 months later, declaring independence on September 28, 1958. Cameroon and Algeria rose in resistance, facing unspeakable brutality. Over 250,000 Cameroonians were massacred, and over 1 million Algerians lost their lives. France saw the writing on the wall and devised a strategy to save face. Now I'm telling you, brothers, there's nothing more magnificent than a black woman who knows who she is, knows who the enemy is, and knows where she comes from. Let's continue. She went on to say, Charles de Gaulle, the president of France at the time, famously remarked that it was cheaper and wiser to pretend to leave rather than to be chased out. His government orchestrated fake independence ceremonies in August 1960, selecting puppet leaders in Gabon, Cote d'Ivoire, Chad, Burkina Faso, the Central African Republic. All these independence dates were deliberately scheduled in the same month so that de Gaulle could take a single month-long trip across Africa and preside over the ceremonies. This strategy gave the illusion of a grand and coordinated gesture of decolonization, when in reality, it was a cynical ploy to maintain French dominance under the guise of granting freedom. Nationalist leaders were jailed, assassinated, or exiled. Behind the facade of independence, France kept control of key economic sectors through the infamous colonial pact, which locked African nations into a system of dependency. They imposed the CFA franc, deployed military bases, and ensured that African armies remained trained and equipped by French forces to guarantee loyalty to Paris. Independence was nothing more than a facade, a cruel joke played on millions of Africans. Today, Emmanuel Macron is following the same playbook. He claims to redefine relations with African nations, but his actions speak louder than his words. By reducing visible troops and shifting to covert operations, training programs, and economic levers, France is not leaving. It is simply changing tactics. Macron spoke openly about his strategy in reports to the French National Assembly. This is 2024, not 1960. Information travels faster and scrutiny is higher. Yet the essence of France's actions remains unchanged. Keep Africa shackled while pretending to set it free. Now, listen, brothers, this is the caliber of black woman you need when it comes time to start a family and have children. Like they say, when they talk about the culture is passed down through the mother, well, really, the culture is set and created by the father, right? The men of the tribe. And then the women pass down and transmit the culture down to the next generation, right? So this is the caliber of black woman you need, brother, when it comes to mentality, when it comes to the spirit. This is the type of woman that deserves your genetic material, brother. This is it, right? This is the woman you can entrust with the blueprints of your legacy, right? This is the woman who understands the assignment, when it comes to, safeguarding our interests. This is the caliber of black woman that you sign a long-term agreement with. You know what I mean? This is what it is, bro. This is what it is, man. This is what it is. If she's not on this type of timing, don't even waste your time. Let's continue. She went on to say, Africans must remain vigilant. Let us not be deceived by the smooth words and hollow promises of France. The decline of French influence in Africa did not start today. It began during Nicolas Sarkozy's era, worsened under François Hollande, and has reached a critical point under Emmanuel Macron. Yet each leader has employed new tactics to maintain French control over the continent, adapting their strategies to shifting dynamics. In 2013, François Hollande admitted in a rare moment of candor that France was losing its grip on Francophone Africa. But instead of planning to reconsider the exploitative policy, France devised a plan to reconquer Africa. Hollande's strategy was not only to reassert control over Francophone nations, but also to extend France's influence into Anglophone countries such as Ghana and Nigeria, and Lusophone nations also, particularly Angola. France understood that its traditional power bases were weakening, and to maintain relevance, it needed to expand into new territories. When Emmanuel Macron became president, he reinforced this plan with renewed aggression. Macron targeted Ghana and Nigeria with precision, recognizing their economic and geopolitical weight in West Africa. French officials openly declared their goal: if they could extend the CFA franc to these nations, they would secure their economic domination of the region for decades. Let us not forget that France will not willingly loosen its grip on Africa. Their retreat is always tactical, and their generosity is always conditional. We cannot be fooled twice. It is up to Africans to organize, educate, and resist. Shout out to that sister, man. One love to that sister. Now, this was an old post that she posted, I think like a couple years ago, but I think it's relevant to the discussion, and I just think it's a very powerful statement that she made. Now, this lady right here, she's from Togo, right? Farida Naburima. She is a Togolese woman. And she said this: in the history lessons we received in primary school in the former French colonies on the slave trade, we had been told that it was a white Frenchman named Victor Schœlcher who abolished slavery. If you ask any primary school student in so-called Francophone African countries who abolished slavery, they will answer with all their pride, Victor Schœlcher. Never in any of our courses from primary to senior high school, and even in the history department at the university, where we heard the names of Toussaint Louverture or Jean-Jacques Dessalines, these black heroes who fought France fiercely, inflicting a crushing defeat on the French. Haiti was the first country in the Western Hemisphere to have abolished slavery. But it is the name of the white Frenchman, Victor Schœlcher, who our parents studied at the colonial school, who we study at the post-colonial school, and who children continue to study at the neo-colonial school. And it is this kind of conditioning that African youth undergo that makes them adults who are proud to say that they are Francophiles and calling those who denounce French imperialism as liars, lazy, and ungrateful. Until our school system is decolonized, we will continue to produce millions of young people every year trained to worship and serve the settlers. Round of applause, man. Round of applause for Farida Naburima. Round of applause for that sister, man. And like I told you before, I've spoke about this on my channel, man. It really starts young. How you think an Alassane Ouattara was created? I told you, they get the minds of our people young. Starting at second grade, third grade, fourth grade, right? By the time they're 17, 18, 19 years old, they're already defeated, right? By the time it's time to go to university, they're already defeated. And Alassane Ouattara is highly educated. He's not a dumb black man. He's a very intelligent black man. He's an economist by profession. He served as the deputy director general at international organizations like the IMF, right? Went to Drexel University, University of Pennsylvania, got a PhD. He is a very intelligent black man. But like I said, that colonial education, man, you could have all the colonial education in the world, but it don't mean a goddamn thing. You still a goddamn stooge for the white man, because like I told you, they get the minds young. You got to get the babies young. You got to indoctrinate the babies when they're young. Right? That's why we have so many self-haters in the community. That's why we have so many traitors and backstabbers and divestors and booty kissers and bootlickers, because they get the minds of our children young. They get them young. And by the time they become leaders and heads of state, it's no wonder they be selling the country away to France, right? You wonder why we got so many sellouts ready to sell the country away to the colonists, because that indoctrination, it starts young. Starts very young, man. It starts in the school. It starts in the classroom, bro. Starts in the classroom, bro. Propaganda warfare, psychological warfare. Let's continue. Now, I want to get into an article that was written by this good brother right here, Ibrahima Maiga. Shout out to this good brother. Yeah. He also had an excellent take on the situation, right? He said this: on December 18, 2023 in Niger, I can still see that line of military trucks kicking up dust on the road while the Sahel sun blazed. People watched almost in disbelief, their eyes reflecting a strange light. A mix of relief and restrained anger. It was the day the French soldiers left Niger, a moment we were told was impossible, even discouraged from desiring. Yet in Abidjan, in Ivory Coast, those same people who called us naive and irresponsible are loudly celebrating a supposed French withdrawal. But is it truly a departure or just a sleight of hand? France, through its security company, had already announced some time ago that it would make its presence less visible, more discreet. So when I hear grand speeches about the end of the French era, I cannot help but think of shadow theater, the lights dimming to allow an unseen hand to move freely in the darkness. Not long ago, certain Ivorian leaders looked down on us, claiming that French bases were indispensable, that disaster awaited us if the French left. Today, those same leaders parade with wide smiles as if they had always been on the right side of history. They act as if they suddenly awaken and want to expel what they once called a benevolent protectorate. But the truth is, their about face is driven solely by the changing winds. Had the tide not turned in the Sahel, they would still be putting obstacles in our path. This is a well-orchestrated false departure. The French presence is not vanishing. It is retreating into the shadows to escape public scrutiny. I cannot help but think back to all the times we were called crazy for daring to say that sovereignty is non-negotiable. And yet, this is the very rhetoric they now repeat, as though they had invented the idea. Those who once defended tutelage now wave the banner of autonomy. But we know the truth. We remember how just months ago they accused us of undermining stability, hiding behind arguments about the CFA franc and security partnerships to silence us. In the crowds in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, and even Ivory Coast, young people are dancing, singing, and pounding on calabashes. They raise their fists to a sky they believe has finally been freed from colonial shadows. I watch them with a tight heart. I wish I could warn them to beware of grandiose speeches, to arm themselves with discernment. I wish I could tell them that dignity is not given, it is taken, and it demands coherence, unwavering courage, and not sudden shifts dictated by political calculations. No matter what the hypocrites say, the change underway was born in the streets, from the men and women who, sometimes at great risk, refused to bow their heads. It was their determination, not the sudden conversions of the powerful, that shifted the lines. The false departures from Ivory Coast fools a few, save for those who choose to be deceived. True courage is holding firm when labeled naive or radical. True courage is standing by principles, even when the sirens of convenience sing in your ears. That day, watching the French trucks roll away from Niger, I felt immense pride. Not so much because France was finally leaving, but because our people had held on. They had never abandoned the idea of being masters of their own destiny. This is not an end, it is just a beginning, the start of a long journey towards genuine sovereignty, where no one can hide behind promises of protection to dictate our choices. As for those who now claim to be expelling the French, when just yesterday they pledged loyalty to her, let them know that the people's memory is long. We will not forget their condescending speeches, nor their cozy alliances with those who long disdained our nations. And no matter how they try to maintain a more invisible presence through the back door, the people's hearts are drawn to the light, and the light will eventually expose their lies. Now, shout out to the good brother Ibrahim Maiga. Shout out to my brother, man. Shout out to my brother. Got love for my boys. Now, going back to the French military strategy. Now, if you remember a few months back, Ibrahim Traoré, in particular, along with the president of Niger, had made accusations towards the president of Benin, saying that there is some secret military bases in Benin, right? And obviously, you know, he came out and denied it. Even the French came out and denied it. Take a look up on the screen. The French deny secret deployment of troops in Benin against Niger. France has denied reports that it has clandestinely deployed troops in Benin to counter the military government in Niger. Right? Now, it's so funny, right? Just the other day, I think maybe on New Year's Eve, December 30th or December 31st, on flightradar.com, on Flight Radar, a French military aircraft was detected in Benin airspace, right? And now we know Benin shares a border with Burkina Faso, Niger, Togo, and Nigeria. And this French military aircraft was landing in the capital, right? I believe it landed in Cotonou on December 30th at 4 p.m. Now, I don't know what they were doing there. I don't know if they was coming to drop something off, if they was coming to pick something up. I don't know what they was doing. I don't know if they was coming to gather intelligence. I don't know. But what we do know is just a few days ago, a French military aircraft was flying in Benin airspace, right? And as Benin, we know, shares a border with Niger and Burkina Faso. So, like I said, this whole, oh yeah, we kicking the French military base out the country, it really don't mean much because Benin, who doesn't have a French military base on paper, right? On paper, Benin doesn't really have a French military base, but as you can see, French military aircraft and French military personnel and French military equipment coming in and out of Benin airspace like it ain't nothing. That goes to show they don't need a traditional military base to engage in military operations. That goes to show this whole entire story about the Ivory Coast president, kicking out the French military, that don't mean nothing, because I guarantee the French Air Force is still going to be in Ivory Coast airspace. Guarantee there's still going to be French soldiers on the ground in some capacity. The only difference is it's a facade, right? The facade of military sovereignty, or the facade of, the French have left. But no, the French have not left, right? You see, the difference when it came to Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger is it wasn't simply the French military packing up and going home. No, the military agreements that were signed, they were terminated, right? So before you try to impress me with some grandiose speeches, you need to terminate the military agreements, right? And not only that, right, but you also have to deal with the fact that the French are heavily entrenched into the local economy. So that's why when it came to Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, it wasn't simply the French troops packing up and leaving. No, we terminated the agreement. And not only that, we are kicking out your companies. Not only are we kicking out your companies, we are destroying your companies, right? So no, I'm not impressed. I'm sorry, Alassane Ouattara, I'm not impressed. Like the brother said earlier, this is nothing more than simply the French retreating into the shadows, because the pressure is red hot, right? We've been on their ass, right? We've been on their ass. So because the pressure and the anti-French sentiment is reaching a critical level, this is simply a tactical retreat. Sometimes in war, you got to retreat. You got to retreat, you got to regroup, and you got to come back. You got to come back stronger. That's all it is. It's simply a tactical retreat into the shadows. We driving the enemy into the shadows. He running scared, but he not leaving though. He hasn't left yet though. Nah, he hasn't left yet. To me, this is simply a false flag operation. Something that seems revolutionary on the surface, but when you peel back the layers, it's some bullshit. Kind of like what happened in Gabon. You remember the president of Gabon was overthrown sometime last year. And for that first day, everybody was excited. And then we found out that it was a false flag operation orchestrated by the French, right? Because the Bongo family, Ali Bongo and his father, Omar Bongo, they had ruled the country for the last 60 years, right? So in the elections, Ali Bongo was set to lose the elections. So what happened? The military came to power. Now, we thought it was a similar revolution that happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, with Niger. Oh, shit. Oh, man, they about to drive the French out. But then what did we see happen? The so-called military leader of Gabon, he going to France, kicking it with Macron. They're the best of buddies, right? They drinking tea in France and all this nonsense, eating croissants and all this nonsense. So then we seen that several agreements were signed for the amount of $739 billion in CFA francs, right? Now, if you convert 739 billion CFA francs to US dollars, that's about, 1.2 billion US dollars. So this guy was installed by the French, obviously, as you can see, right? So once he came to power, he ended up signing, $1 billion worth of economic agreements with the French. And not only that, but he also met up with Secretary Anthony Blinken of the United States. Anthony Blinken said this: "I met with Gabon's president. The United States is looking forward to partnering with Gabon throughout the country's transition to democracy and elevating our bilateral relationships across sectors, including development, environment, and security." So that's why I say you got to sit back and watch. Everything is not the same, right? Every coup is not the same. Every political action is not the same, right? So just because in Mali they kicked out the French and in Ivory Coast they supposedly kicked out the French, it's not the same thing. It's not the same political landscape. It's not the same political ethos there. You know what I mean? It's not the same thing, right? Alassane Ouattara is never going to take a similar position to the guys in the AES. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, bro. It's not going to happen. Do not count on that man to be the guy for the job. He's not the man for the job. The only reason he made that announcement is because it was already in line with French foreign policy. The French had already planned to reduce and reposition their military on the continent, right? They had already planned to transition to a more undercover clandestine approach, right? Where they can move under the cover of darkness. How similar to, like I told you, in Benin. In Benin, they don't have any traditional military bases in Benin, but like I just showed you, in less than a week ago, the French Air Force was flying all through Benin airspace. So therefore, we can see that you don't need to have a military base in order to have a military presence. But anyways, man, before we get out of here, let's take a look at some articles so we can kind of examine the economic situation in France and why those guys are so frantic to rectify the situation in Africa. Take a look up on the screen. France's debt rose to 112% of the GDP in the second quarter. French debt hits a new high, amounting to 112% of the GDP. Budget woes put French borrowing costs equal with crisis-scarred Greece. So yeah, man, the money looking funny right now. The money looking funny. Like I said, we destroyed the French multi-billion-dollar multinational Orano. You know, the money just looking funny. Them boys borrowing money left and right. If things keep up like this, pretty soon they're not even gonna be able to pay their bills. Man, listen, them boys stressing right now. Them boys stressed out. But anyways, man, that's pretty much what I got to say on the situation. Alison Ouattara, you know, trying to act like trying to cosplay as a revolutionary. Stop it, bro. You put a white French Jewish woman on the throne, man. We don't believe none of that shit you talking about. Talking about we kicking the white man out the country. Please, man. Please. Ain't trying to hear none of that, bro. You got married in Paris to a white woman. Be quiet, bro. Anyway, man, it's your boy Never Card. That's Salim back in the middle. Yes, indeed. Cash App in the description. Support the channel, man. Support the album. Peace.
No. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders. You know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wife. Yeah, hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word in this bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I mean no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Back in my city, they loving me. Standing alone, I'm 100 deep. Enemy plotting and still in reach. They trying to make sure that we underneath. Trying to make sure that we never make it. Coming for power, come get acquainted. Coming for everything that I wanted. Feeling like Drake, but I really wrote it. Feeling like Kendrick, I'm checking names. Gotta roll up while I go insane. Got so much stress, I been gained weight. Stuffing these racks in this Louis case. One thing for certain, I'm about to shake. Keep it 100 and nothing less. Stick with the family since day one. Had to stay down till my day come. Had to stay down, but I'm never patient. Hop on the mic and I'm motivated. Hop on the mic and I drive a classic. Haters can't see me, they copping glasses. Back in the studio making magic. Got a new tape and it's in production. Back on my business, I got a budget. Staying low key when I'm out in public. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders. You know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wife. Yeah, I'm hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word in this bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I mean no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Making it news, making it news, breaking the rules, yeah, know that we making it news.